Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. And I am just offering this class today, and I told a few people that I would record it. So I am just going to record this, and I will also put the Word document in here as well. So if you guys want anything to print off, you're welcome to do so. So in today's lesson, we're going to talk about the importance of boundaries. So this has been coming up a lot for me lately. It's also been coming up for a lot of my coaching clients. So I feel like the universe always sends me these signs of things that I should talk about in these lessons. So boundaries, I believe, is one of the things that I should be talking about. So here we go. Welcome, everybody. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Becky. I'm a master sound instructor and a mentor at Meditate School of Mindfulness and Sound Healing. And I'm also out here in the world. I own my own sound studio, so I'm an affiliate. I teach the sound trainings out of my studio. I also am the co-owner of a studio where I do sound baths and I do ecstatic dancing and I do all sorts of other things. So for anybody who hasn't met me in person, that's who I am. So anyway, here we go. The importance of boundaries. So boundaries are often heard and repeated as something important for one's personal well-being and relationships. For many of us, it may be hard to define and know when we are dealing with boundaries in our lives. Boundaries are emotional, physical, mental, behavioral, intellectual, financial, and sexual limits that we set to protect ourselves. They teach others how to treat us, and they show others and ourselves what we will allow. They are extremely important in committing ourselves to cultivating what is good for us and keeping out that which is bad for us. Boundaries are what an individual thinks, feels, or does to protect, contain, or be in integrity with their physical, emotional, physiological, psychological, and spiritual spaces. Healthy boundaries allow us to engage with the world in an open, curious, receptive way, connecting with others. Overly rigid boundaries can prevent us from feeling close to people or cutting off opportunities to connect. And overly permeable boundaries can result in feeling at the mercy of others' needs and influences. A boundary crossing is when a situation arises where one's personal safety or integrity was actually or perceived to be threatened. Oftentimes we find ourselves struggling to set boundaries. Sometimes it's difficult to simply say no when we are already at our physical or emotional capacity. I think that's programming that a lot of us have especially with our kids or members of our family. Especially, I feel like because people are related to us, we feel like, oh, we should not have boundaries with people like that. But I think actually with your family and with people that are closest to you, sometimes you have to have the strongest boundaries. So just some things to think about. It is difficult to say no sometimes, but it is in our best interest sometimes to say no as well. When we engage in behaviors that run counter to our values or how we see ourselves as people, the result is often an internal sense of distress. It can be difficult to assert yourself in situations where it would be easier to just go along with the actions of others or to remain quiet. The truth is that in the long term, a sacrifice is made when we engage in overt or covert behaviors that are not in line with our values. It often takes deep reflection and practice to begin to stand up for those things which we know to be right or true. Without boundaries, it's easy to feel run down and resentful. Here are some signs that you aren't holding healthy boundaries. You are often exhausted, even after a good night's sleep. The term self-care makes you laugh out loud. Your sympathetic nervous system is activated, so you frequently experience anxiety and tension even when you're not in a stressful situation. Negative thought patterns dominate your psyche. You feel like a victim when others are to blame. You feel other people's emotions very strongly and often lose touch with your own. This is called emotional contagion. You find it hard to connect with your center, detect your own needs, or even figure out what you want for lunch. Healthy boundaries are similar to self-care, and that while they seem to be all about you, The practices actually benefit the people around you as well, even though in the beginning, that's maybe not always the case. When I first started on my own journey and started setting boundaries, the people who took advantage of me and my time and energy didn't care for my boundaries because my boundaries were no longer benefiting them. So always know that when you first start setting boundaries, you might have some people who drop out of your life or get very upset with you at first because you're no longer showing up as the person that you've always been. So just something to keep in mind. Just like mindfulness can be an integral part of our self-care routine, mindfulness can also play a supportive role in our quest to improve our energy levels through effective boundary setting. So there's lots of different personal boundaries. I'm going to talk about 7 personal boundaries today. And personal boundaries are a way of protecting our time, space, and energy. Usually it's a limit that we set between ourselves and others. But I really do often find it helpful to set boundaries for myself as well. Personal boundaries are limits that help us honor our values and priorities, and they're arguably more important than ever. Slowly but surely, expectations are rising. We feel like we have to do more, be more, own more, buy more. And it's just kind of all becoming a lot, right? As we struggle to keep our heads above water, the things that matter get pushed to the wayside. Strong personal boundaries are a way of cutting out some of the noise, which is always nice. I'm always interested in that these days. When we make intentional decisions about things like our time, money, environment, and relationships, we're not being difficult or selfish or unkind. Instead, we're simply drawing a line in the sand, deciding what matters, and taking steps to align our lives accordingly. There are many types of personal boundaries and different ways of classifying them. The ones that we're going to talk about, the 7, is not an exhaustive list, but these 7 types of boundaries have made a significant impact in my own life, and I hope they inspire you to get curious and experiment with setting limits for yourself, because boundaries can be really, really important. And boundaries are also what we put in place so that people understand how they can treat us. And if someone is treating you poorly, and you put a boundary up, you're going to feel bad maybe at first about setting a boundary up against that person because it's probably somebody you care about. But if that person truly cared about you, they would treat you with respect. And putting up a boundary is just demanding that respect as far as I'm concerned. So just some things to start thinking about. So, physical boundaries. Physical boundaries are limits that relate to space and our environment. Sometimes they are quite personal. For example, you might need to tell someone that you prefer to shake hands instead of hugging when saying hello. To me, these types of boundaries are non-negotiable, and I hope you're able to get the support you need to make them as well. So healthy physical boundaries might sound like, I'm really tired, I need to sit down now. I'm not a big hugger, I am a handshake person. I need to eat, I am going to go grab something. I am allergic to whatever, so we can't have that in our home. No, I don't want you to touch me like that. Don't go into my room without asking first. Physical boundary violations may feel like receiving inappropriate or unwanted touch, being denied your physical needs, having someone come into your personal space in a way that is uncomfortable, so entering your room without permission, for example. This can vary on a spectrum from mild to severe. The most severe violations result in serious physical abuse or neglect. And here are ways that we can set physical boundaries for others and ourselves. We set limits on how many things we own. So this might look like making an intentional decision about something as simple as how many towels to keep, or limiting toys to what fit easily into a playroom. Limits on the type of things we own. You might choose not to buy fast fashion or single-use plastics if that aligns with your values. Limits to what people can bring into your home. So you might ask someone not to smoke in your house or not to bring unhealthy snacks to children. So those are just some boundaries for that. The next is we're going to talk about is emotional boundaries. So emotional boundaries are all about respecting and honoring feelings and energy. Setting emotional boundaries means recognizing how much emotional energy you are capable of taking in, knowing when to share and when not to share, and limiting emotional sharing with people who respond poorly. Respecting emotional boundaries means validating the feelings of others and making sure you respect their ability to take in emotional information. So emotional boundaries might sound like when I share my feelings with you and get criticized, it makes me totally shut down. I can only share with you if you are able to respond respectfully to me. I am so sorry you are having such a tough time. Right now, I am not in a place to take in all of this information. Do you think we can come back to this conversation later? I am having a hard time and really need to talk. Are you in a place to listen right now? I really can't talk about that right now. It isn't the right time. Emotional boundary violations look like dismissing and criticizing feelings, asking questions that are not appropriate for the relationship, reading or going through personal and emotional information, asking people to justify their feelings, assuming we know how other people feel, telling other people how they feel, emotionally dumping on people without their permission. I think this emotional dumping is something that we all do. And a situation happened within my own family last year about this time. And the one thing that I really got out of what ended up transpiring was that we all do this emotional dumping, and we don't think it's a big deal when it's about small things. But then when somebody does it on the big things and we go, well, I don't like when you do that. And then that person says, yeah, but you do it all the time. And then you think, no, I don't. And then you think back and you go, actually, yes, I do. So, think about it like this. So something happens between you and a coworker, and maybe you and this coworker have a fine relationship, but every now and then you and this coworker butt heads. And so every night you go home and you vent to your roommate about this person and you say, oh my gosh, da 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 da. Well, your roommate is only hearing all of these things that you're venting about. And then you and this coworker end up working everything out. And then the next time, maybe you and this coworker and your roommate meet up somewhere. And now your roommate is like, yeah, no, I don't like this person. And you go, why? Well, because you're always telling me all these awful things that they're doing. We do these things, we vent about people or situations because we just need to get it off our chest. What we don't understand is that those words, those feelings, those get transferred onto the person that we're talking to. And even if we think, oh, that person doesn't know this person, I just need them to listen to me. We're transferring that knowledge, that energy, all of that to that other person. And then we really are expecting that other person just to let all that go and forget that they've heard any of these things and just be cool with this person that we're now cool with. It is something that does happen. And I didn't realize how much it happens until I really started paying attention to stuff like that. Also, at the same time, when you emotionally dump on someone, you really are. That person maybe is in a fine mood, they're in a fine flow, and then you come in and just dump all of this foggy, heavy energy on them. And then a lot of the times emotional dumpers get to just walk away and they go, oh, I feel better. Well, good for you, because the person that you just emotionally dumped on probably doesn't feel as good as they did 10 minutes ago. So sometimes, and this is something that I've really learned over this past year, and really it's made me a happier person. Also, I find that I hardly engage in anything these days because nothing really is worth even the energy shift in any way out of the flow that I'm in. If it doesn't feel warm and lovely and good, I'm just not engaging in it anymore. I just don't have the brain space for it. But, just sometimes just, listening and not emotionally dumping on people is the right way to go. Sharing inappropriate emotional information with your children. People are doing this a lot also. Your children, although they can be your friends and all that, there's just some things that you just shouldn't be. A boundary that you shouldn't be crossing there. So mental boundaries. Mental boundaries can be harder to explain because we can't always see when a line has been crossed, but we all know how it feels. There's a tightening in the chest, an all-consuming thoughts that you just can't shake. Of course, sometimes tough feelings are healthy and inevitable, but as with all things, we have limits. You should be saving your emotional energy and mental strength for things that matter and not unnecessary drama, which is exactly what I've been doing these days, and life is a lot better. For example, if reading certain magazines or browsing social media sends you into a spiral of insecurity and self-doubt, then maybe you need to set limits or boundaries on the media you consume. I definitely have to do this. Facebook is now onto the fact that I love rescue dogs, that I love a good dog story, and that hearing about people abusing animals makes me insane. So now Facebook, all they do on my personal page is send me videos of dogs that need to be rescued and all of this stuff. So I can only go on Facebook for so long before I eventually have to put it down because I am in such turmoil over all of these dogs. So I have to limit that for myself. On a similar note, if you have a friend who is always talking about weight loss and dieting, and this makes you feel anxious about your eating habits, then you might want to ask them to avoid the topic around you. If you're not sure what mental boundaries you need, start paying close attention to your emotions. If something is mentally draining, ask yourself if this is a good use of your time and emotional energy. If not, what can you do to prevent this in the future? And I feel like that's kind of what boundaries are all about. Making sure that you are always in a space that you feel safe and secure, and that you're always dealing in ways that you want. And if that's somebody is always crossing your boundary and that makes you not feel good, then you have every right to set that boundary to prevent those things happening in the future. Time boundaries. Time boundaries are limits to how you spend your time. And honestly, I find this one the toughest to enforce, actually, in my treatments, in my just in life in general. There are several reasons for this. People pleasing. When we're afraid of letting other people down, we say yes to helping others even when we're already stretched to our limits. The planning fallacy. This is a cognitive bias that leads to underestimating how long it will take to do things. So in other words, we have a natural tendency to bite off more than we can chew. I don't do that one, but I definitely, the people pleasing for sure. Busyness culture. We live in a world where it's easy to confuse productivity with self-worth. There's internal and external pressure to always be doing more. We're always feeling like if you're not doing something all the time that you're a loser and there's something wrong with you. There isn't. Healthy time boundaries might sound like, I can't come to that event this weekend. I can only stay for an hour. Do you have time to chat today? I would love to help, but I would be overcommitting myself. Is there another time? We have family time on Sundays, so we won't make it. I am happy to help with that. My hourly rate is blank. Violated time boundaries look like this: asking professionals for their time without paying them, demanding time from people, keeping people in conversations or on tasks for longer than we told them we would, showing up late or canceling on people because we overcommitted, contacting people when they said they would be unavailable. And I think we're all guilty of these things. And I feel like we do these things unconsciously, but this is a mindful practice that we need to start thinking about other people's time. And if we are asking a professional for their time, we should be paying them in some way or another. This boundary can feel more uncomfortable than most. I don't want people to think I'm being selfish. But remember, the setting boundaries doesn't automatically mean never helping. Instead, it's about deciding in advance how you can help in a way that aligns with your values, priorities, and strengths. We are on this earth to live a human experience and to interact with people and to learn and to flop on our faces and to do all those things. But we're here for us, for our journey. And that really is where we should be approaching this boundary section from, is from our perspective, our values, our priorities, and our strengths. For example, you might say no to spending an entire afternoon house hunting with a friend, but then spend an hour looking for options online because you have excellent research skills. You can protect your time while still providing value when it makes sense to do so. So here are some simple ways to set time boundaries in your life. Request. If it's not urgent, according to your priorities, reply and give yourself a generous time frame to take action. For example, thank you. I'll have time to action this early next week. Phone use. Try to maintain a strong boundary by not sleeping next to your phone, charging it across the room so you don't feel tempted to check it first thing in the morning. 100%. Don't do time blocks. Set rules about when you will or won't do things. For example, I don't clean during my only free time. I might have in a week. I don't do it. I decided this early on, and it allows me to rest during this time without constantly feeling guilty about housework. Kind of let myself off the hook there. Let's see. Then we have sexual boundaries. Healthy sexual boundaries include consent, agreement, respect, understanding of preferences and desires, and privacy. This is a tough one for some people to set, but also for some people to hear about. So I am going to talk about sexual boundaries now, if that's something that anyone is uncomfortable hearing about. You know, then I encourage you to listen away somewhere for a couple of minutes. So healthy sexual boundaries include asking for consent, discussing and asking for what pleases you, requesting a condom use if you want it, discussing contraception, saying no to things that you do not like or that hurt you, protecting the privacy of the other person. This might sound like, do you want to have sex now? Is this comfortable for you? Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. I don't like that. Let's try something different. I don't want to have sex tonight. Can we cuddle instead? I am really into, and insert your desire here. Is that something you would feel comfortable with? Sexual boundary violations include sulking, punishing, or getting angry if someone does not want to have sex, not asking for consent, pressure to engage in unwanted sexual acts, unwanted sexual comments, leering, lying about contraceptive use, lying about your health history, criticizing the person's sexual preferences, unwanted touch, assault, or rape. And that is a tough one. Again, not all of these boundaries are equal in, effort and bravery. And sometimes with some boundaries, they're forced on us and we don't have a choice. But though that is what sexual boundaries look like. So then we have intellectual boundaries. Intellectual boundaries refer to your thoughts, ideals, and curiosity. Healthy intellectual boundaries include respect for the ideas of other people, and they can be violated when your thoughts and curiosity are shut down, dismissed, or belittled. Respectfulness and willingness to dialogue and understand are important here. Healthy intellectual boundaries also mean considering whether or not it is a good time to talk about something. They might sound like, I know we could disagree, but I won't let you belittle me like that. I would love to talk about this more, but I don't think talking about it during Thanksgiving dinner is the best time. When we talk about this, we don't get very far. I think it is a good idea to avoid the conversation right now. I can respect that we have different opinions on this. I feel like in the current political climate that we live in, and unfortunately that political climate has kind of taken over everything, these conversations are the hardest. I think these intellectual boundaries, people can't talk about politics. We used to be able to have even heated conversations and then laugh and go, okay, that's what you believe, this is what I believe, let's have a beer, let's move on. We just can't do that now, and it's a shame because we don't have respect that other people have different opinions, and so do we. And we don't approach these things with curiosity anymore, just anger. So does this mean that you need to be accepting of all thoughts and opinions? Absolutely not. It is also important to learn to recognize the difference between healthy and unhealthy discourse. If someone is sharing an opinion that is inherently harmful, i.e. racism, sexism, homophobia, then you have every right to put a hard line in the sand. You can set the boundary in your own way. And it might sound something like letting the person know you do not tolerate that kind of talk, or distancing yourself from them, or not speaking to them at all anymore. You do not have to have intellectual discourse with someone who is violating you or other people. That is a hard boundary for me. Then there is financial boundaries. Financial boundaries can look like creating a budget, deciding not to buy certain things, or setting limits for purchases. So here are some examples. Having a savings account that you don't touch except for emergencies, setting limits to how much you'll spend on Christmas gifts, or deciding not to exchange gifts, creating a budget for charitable donations, and making intentional decisions about the causes that you want to support, asking friends to do free activities instead of an expensive one. So those are some financial boundaries for sure, and things that, I think, none of these boundaries that we've spoken about, they all are amazing. And I think starting with any of these boundaries, would really get you going and set you up for, for setting all sorts of boundaries in the future. So using mindfulness for boundary setting. Mindfulness is all about awareness of what's going on inside you and around you. This awareness allows you to determine what's healthy for you. Mindfulness is also a centering practice. It trains your brain to come back again and again to the present moment. From this center, you can effectively set boundaries to protect your health. Also, mindfulness invites you to tune into your thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations. This awareness can give you insight into which engagements and relationships support your boundaries and which ones undermine them. Here are some tips and mindfulness thoughts to get you started on becoming an expert boundary setter. So one of the first things that you need to do is get clearer about your own boundaries. This seems simple at the surface, but can be difficult for many. Mindfulness can help by getting clearer with your emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical boundaries and the cues for when a boundary crossing has occurred. Meditation, radical acceptance, being more present in your mind and your body helps to slow down the process, helping you to reflect and attune to these cues, which are often felt rather than cognitively experienced. So that's developing that mind-body connection. You can identify which personal boundary is being crossed. This can allow you to cut through the noise and get focused on where you need to start with someone or a situation that needs some clearer boundaries. All of the different boundaries that you can dive into, we just talked about. Another thought is be direct and specific. And this is hard. This is where boundary setting gets hard because you do need to be direct and specific. When someone crosses a boundary or you need to set a boundary for the first time, it's important to speak up in a firm and straightforward way. Now, firm and straightforward does not mean being a jerk. It just means being firm and straightforward. Remember that your speaking up is doing both of you a service and setting your relationship up for success and effectiveness in the future. If you're comfortable, you can tell them in the moment. If you need more time to process, try journaling and talking about what happened and gathering your thoughts first. Once you can articulate your needs, voice them in a kind and succinct way. That's a hard one, but that's no matter who it is. If somebody has crossed a boundary or you need to set one for the first time, be kind and succinct, but be clear and direct. Know when a boundary is being crossed. This is where we take the time to notice and connect into all the tensions, sensations, and thoughts within us that get triggered when someone is crossing a boundary. Bringing awareness to these sensations and thoughts mindfully and in the present moment, not just dismissing these things like always, allows us to really connect into how many times we allow our boundaries to get crossed. Here is another way that you can assess whether a boundary is being crossed either by you or someone else is to ask, is this true to yourself? Pause to reflect on whether or not what you are about to do or not do is true to your values. Ask yourself honestly about your intentions and motivations behind your actions. Are you about to behave in a way that you can feel proud of, or do you feel a sense of regret forming in the pit of your stomach? Many people get caught in a trap of behaving in ways that are not in line with their values out of a sense of social pressure. Other times it simply feels easier to go along with things that make us uncomfortable. Begin to ask yourself if the choice to act or not act in ways that are not in line with your values is truly easy in the grand scheme of things. Chances are it is not. What are the short-term and long-term consequences of your behaviors to the way you see yourself, to the way others see you, to your relationships? Pause to mindfully reflect upon what you are about to do or not do and notice what thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations arise within. If the world was watching, would you be proud of yourself? Be kind to yourself and recognize that we all make mistakes sometimes. Try to avoid extreme thinking like I should never make mistakes. That's what we're living on this ball, this earth ball for, is to live life and to live and enjoy and be happy, but also to make mistakes and to learn. Instead, adopt a compassionate and mindful attitude towards yourself. When mistakes do happen, reflect on what important lessons needed to be learned and what those mistakes did for you and not to you. Choosing to become more mindfully self-aware in the present moment makes it less likely that you will engage in impulsive, careless, or otherwise regrettable actions. Notice what you are about to do or say before doing or saying it. Consider the effects that your actions will have on others and make fully aware and informed decisions. If what you are about to say or do feels somehow wrong to you, honor your deeper wisdom and intuition. Listen to what your inner voice is telling you and respond with mindfulness. The other question to ask yourself is what I say and am about to say or do kind and helpful to myself? Sometimes we engage in behaviors that we believe other people would like, but that are not truly in our best interests. If you have the sense that what you are about to say or do will be harmful to yourself in some way, explore your motivations honestly. What are you hoping to gain from others? Consider the reasoning behind your potential willingness to set your own needs or wants aside. There are times when it is appropriate and loving to allow our own needs to temporarily rest on the back burner if someone we love is in need or danger. Other times we end up putting ourselves in the position of the martyr unnecessarily. It is important to recognize those times in which we must set boundaries to protect our own physical, mental, or emotional health. Many people have powerful urges to jump in and help or save someone who really needs to learn difficult lessons for themselves. I feel like I talk about this stuff, especially this little section here, to parents a lot. I feel like I have a lot of clients who are parents and they're really wanting to step in and protect their kids from not making the same mistakes that they made. And it's interesting because my mom and I just had this conversation because my mom very much, she very much wants my sister and I to avoid any things that she can protect us from. But I kind of said to her, you know, I'm not a parent, so I'm sure this is way easier for me to say because I don't have to actually put this into action. But I really learned more from making my own mistakes. And if my mom had protected me from everything, I wouldn't have any skills. I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't know how to do things for myself. And although as a parent, I imagine you want to protect your kid from every imaginable bad scenario, you want their life to be happy at all moments, just know that them going through those hard moments are what are giving them this emotional maturity and this stable ground where they can go into life and face things that come at them. Because that's how I learned, and that's how you learned, and that's how your grandkids will learn. And we can't stop everything. We can't step in and help or save someone who really needs to learn difficult lessons for themselves. But also, as parents, you do not get to take every single insult and disrespectful anything hurled at you from your children. I think that is also something that we get hung up in. We believe they're our children, and I think there's a component of they talk to us like that. Why don't they love us? At the same time, that allows us to kind of take it. And so I do want you to know that setting boundaries with your kids about how they can and cannot talk to you is maybe one of the most kind things you will ever do for them, because they really do need to learn. If they're talking to their parents like this, how do they talk to other people out in the world? And that is just not okay. If I ever spoke to my mom how some of my clients' kids speak to them, she would have murdered me years ago. So just know that you also don't have to take all of that from your kids. You can set very kind but strong boundaries with them as well. And I think it will be doing them a huge favor as well as you. It is crucial to remember the value of taking care of yourself before helping others. If you are physically, mentally, or emotionally drained and depleted, you are not going to be helpful to others in the way you desire. Take the time to employ self-care strategies into your life so that your gas tank is full. Notice times when it is in your best interest to say no to a request or invitation. Tap into your inner intuition and mindfully notice your initial reactions, thoughts, feelings, or sensations to the requests or demands from another person. If you feel tension develop in your stomach or neck when something is asked of you, don't ignore it. Your body is trying to tell you something important if only you will listen. Let go of the outcome. This is one of the most important and yet one of the hardest aspects of setting boundaries. Setting a healthy boundary means you know you might hurt the person's feelings, and this is hard. Let's see. Remember that the boundary is for your well-being. Even if the recipient is offended at first, typically they will come around after being given time to process. And if they don't, well, then that's for them to figure out for themselves. When we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated. That's what Brene Brown believes. And then develop ways to respond to boundary crossings. With further awareness of when boundary crossings occur, you now have more options to respond or not respond. Instead of unconsciously reacting, you can choose how to set boundaries in kinder and more connecting ways, which may also help you feel more empowered to develop the relationships you actually want. Using mindfulness to explore how you formed a belief system around your physical, emotional, spiritual, and psychological boundaries can aid you in deciding if you want to change them. Change can look like having more options in responding and having choice of when to be more rigid or flexible with your boundaries, depending on any given situation or relationship. Getting clearer about your boundaries is usually the first area of developing healthy boundaries, since it provides a compass to navigate relationships. But here are other things you can do, which we will now explore a little bit further. So have a regular centering practice, taking a few minutes every day to be with yourself, whether through meditation, prayer, mindful movement, or quiet time. This will help you improve your self-awareness and set more effective boundaries. Schedule recovery time on your calendar. Have you ever looked at your calendar, saw an empty space, and said yes to engagements that were right on top of each other? Packing in activity after activity can often prove unmanageable in the moment. Schedule time for yourself, even if it's one night a week, to do nothing or practice self-care. Start with maybe. When someone asks you to commit to something, start with a maybe. Then take some time to check in with how you feel about the request and compare it to your calendar. During this consideration, focus on the long term with this person and commitment matter to you in 1 month or 1 year. This practice removes the people-pleasing urge to say yes in the moment. It also means that when you are later able to say yes, the recipient will be that much more grateful for your commitment. Practice saying goodbye. One of the best skills you can fine-tune is the ability to say goodbye with grace. Instead of inventing stories about other commitments, you can simply say, thank you for sharing. It's always great to hear your voice. I have to go now, and I look forward to connecting again soon. Practicing different variations of this for phone, text, and in-person conversations can be extremely helpful. As we have seen in all of the stuff that we've talked about today, there are many reasons to start and continue to set better boundaries. The more we set boundaries, the more we recognize them. And in setting boundaries, we help people show up for us, and we also become better at showing up for them. In the words of Brene Brown, clear is kind. So that is a lot of stuff we just talked about setting boundaries. But, you know, there's a lot of information in this sheet that I just read through, and I'm going to post this. I encourage you to read through it. Again, there's a lot more. There's an exhaustible list of personal boundaries that you can set. I chose to explore 7 in here because I think that all of these have the greatest impact. But, you know, I would love to hear your thoughts. If anybody has any thoughts after you read these things, if there's some tricks or tips that you might also give people for setting boundaries. But just remember that setting boundaries are, it's important for us, but it's also important for other people to understand how they need to show up for us as well. So yeah, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And, you know, thank you very much, Ms. Rosemary, for joining this class today. And, you know, I will see you all later. Have a great day.